and welcome to the Caffeinated Librarian. My name is Amy,
I'm Simona.
and today we're going to be talking about Labyrinth. And I know nothing about it other than it is Labyrinth, and I watched the movie. So I'm going to hand it over to Simona for our details.
Okay, so for those who may be unfamiliar or if you've seen it when it first premiered, I'm just going to give a little refresher. So Labyrinth is a 1986 fantasy musical film. It's the second film that Amy and I are discussing for our November Nostalgia series. The film stars Jennifer Connelly and David Bowie as the Goblin King. So the basic premise of the story is 16-year-old Sarah is given 13 hours to rescue her baby brother Toby from the Goblin King. Should she fail to rescue Toby, he will remain with the goblins forever. And along the way, Sarah is aided in her quest by a few inhabitants of the Goblin Kingdom. And Sarah's brother Toby ends up in the Goblin Kingdom because Sarah is upset at having to babysit him. So she basically says, I wish the goblins would come and take you away. And the goblins do just that. They come in the middle of a stormy night and they take Toby away. Sarah is horrified because she didn't realize that her wish would be granted or taken seriously.
Like,
And
I'm going to get in so much trouble. Ah!
yes. So David Bowie shows up, not David Bowie, but the Goblin King. But saying David Bowie is pretty accurate because I really think he was just playing himself in this film. So I'm going to go with that.
Yeah.
So he shows up and he sort of mocks Sarah and he basically says, I'll give your brother back. You have to come to my kingdom, manage to get through my labyrinth. And if you succeed, I'll give him back to you. If not, he remains with me forever. So, and that's where it sort of takes off. And, Sarah enters this magical land. And along the way, she meets some pretty interesting characters who either hinder her or help her. So, yeah, that's a very brief introduction.
And where did you watch this movie? How did you get it?
So I watched it. I've seen it several times. The first time I watched it, I'm assuming, I honestly cannot even remember the first time I watched this film, but I have seen it several times. I own the film.
Okay.
Yeah, but I can't recall when was the first time I actually watched it.
Okay. No, well, I was actually asking like where did you get it? Because I actually own it as well, but I own it through Amazon Prime Video. So I just wanted to know how people could get this if obviously the library.
Yes, the library, our system does own a copy. I believe I may have purchased mine through Amazon.
Cool.
Like actually getting the physical DVD through Amazon, although I could be wrong. Like I said, it's I've had it for so long that I can't recall whether I ordered it from Amazon. I remember there was once upon a time when Borders still existed that they, sold films. And
Right.
I thought it was available on Netflix. I'm wrong because I checked and it's not there.
It looks like it is, but it's not. It's a weird, I don't know what's up with that kind of thing on like it looks like they just kind of pop in any movie you're looking for and just say they have it and then you get there and they don't.
Yeah, it's a little frustrating because I thought they did have it, but apparently not. But for those who are interested, you could always rent it through our library, or as Amy said, Amazon Prime sells it for.
Check it out through the library.
Yeah.
Sorry, we don't rent.
All right, so I do have a few notes. I have a lot of images that I printed out for myself, and I've been reading some pretty interesting theories about overall what the film is supposed to represent.
Me too.
Yeah, one of the more interesting is that Sarah, when she was younger, because I never realized that Sarah's mom
I know.
an actress, like that completely, like I did not realize that. And there's a moment in the film when Sarah's in her room that you see a picture of her mother with David Bowie, who's playing
Jeremy.
yeah, like he's an actor, and they're
They
standing side
fell
by
in
side.
love.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the scrapbook is actually all of her mom. It's all of her mom and Jeremy, and their on-screen, off-screen love, and it was
yeah,
on again, off again, and like it seems like she left the dad and Sarah for for Jeremy, David Bowie, Jareth. And by the way, Jeremy, Jareth, what? Which brings me to one of the theories that, like, there are a few different theories. One is that it's all in Sarah's imagination, which I mean, I think, like, I imagine that's probably one of your theories as well.
yeah. One theory that I read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I maybe we go through theory by theory because there are a lot of theories. This is very rich in theories.
That's definitely a good idea. I like one theory that I read in addition to it being in her mind, which is plausible because one of the very first shots in the film is of Sarah's bedroom. And if you pay attention, there are elements within her bedroom that figure into the Goblin Kingdom. So
Yeah.
she has like a
And
toy.
oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to mention. So she has a
Yeah.
toy maze, a few stuffed animals resemble the characters that she meets along the way. So the theory that this could be an elaborate like dream.
Well, what?
I'm sorry.
Sorry. Let's just repeat that in a moment when my dogs are done being complete jerkheads. Actually, I'm going to take this opportunity to close the door,
Okay.
because they were in the bedroom when I got in here. Hold on. Don't let them in. I'm closing the door. Sorry. Pet ownership. And they feed off each other. So, like, Bella doesn't even know what she's barking at half the time, and she's just yelling alongside Albie. Okay. So what were we saying before dogs?
Oh, if we're going with the theory that this is an elaborate construction of Sarah's imagination, there are there are hints to that possible truth to the theory when you look at her bedroom, and there are specific elements within her bedroom that play into the construction of the Goblin Kingdom. So she has a model of a maze. Sir Didymus appears. He's one of the stuffed animals that she has. She has a big figurine of this like goblin-like shape.
Fiery.
Yeah, she also has a fiery. So that could play into, these are things that she has that she surrounds herself with, and she's projected these objects into this elaborate construction of her mind. There's another theory that she's a victim of sexual abuse.
Well, why
So,
don't we keep going through one at a time?
okay, sure.
Unless that's part of it's her imagination.
Well, yeah, one person, I think this was a Reddit theory that I read. One person said that in order to cope with the abuse that she suffered, she constructs this elaborate fantasy world. So
Hmm.
it's another way of her to be able to cope with what's happened to her. And another person, I think, following us, well, because there's the theory of imagination, there's the theory of sexual abuse, there's also a theory that it's a metaphor for a young girl's budding sexuality. And this one person mentions a lot of the phallic symbols that you see throughout the movie, and also a few.
Look at Jareth's pants.
Yeah, but I could go into that because, yeah, there are certain elements of the movie that I thought were a little inappropriate considering it's aimed at children. But a lot of the phallic symbols, there also are some symbols that relate to womanhood and sexuality. So, yeah, so the one similar thread is that these are elaborate constructions. The only difference is why she's constructing this elaborate world. So that would be the variant in each of those three theories.
Mm-hmm. Well, what do you think? So and then there's I read a few theories. So let's just touch on the another theory is that it's all real.
Mm-hmm.
Um and then actually I read an interesting um blog post about whether Jareth was doing mind control.
Mm.
So like a labyrinth um is a very popular image of the mind. And so, Jareth sending her in as, training her to be under his control and giving her the illusion that she fought back and won. And then, like, at the end of the movie, when everybody's back, like, in her room again, and Jareth flies away, that's like the image that he's like, this was all part of his plan. So maybe a good way to go about it is like we pick sides and we discuss.
Okay.
Because I want to be, there are so many things to talk about that I feel like in previous episodes having so much to talk about has made us so scattered.
Okay.
So let's figure out where to go from here for a minute. Um, so which one do you believe? What's the one that you think is true?
A part of me would just like to think it's a strictly fantasy film. So there's a part of me that wants to believe this is strictly a fantasy film. Not that it can't be without metaphor, but I kind of want to separate it from, this is just an elaborate construction, so part of me wants to believe it's just strictly a fantasy film, but a part of me, considering certain elements of the story, well, is an elaborate construction. And then a third part of me is like, well, if Jared has, like, assuming he's been watching her for a while, because his owl form, you see him in the garden when you first meet Sarah and she's reciting this play. So if he has been watching her for a while, he's aware of her habits, he's aware of what she likes, so he probably has modeled his kingdom after what he knows she finds familiar and somewhat comforting. So I'm going to take the opinion that it's actually happening. She is entering this magical world, but Jared, with the power that he has, can manipulate it to look as he wants and to sort of mimic what she finds familiar. So I'm taking the stance she actually entered a magical world.
Cool. Cool. I like that. Okay. So let's talk about why it could be that. What would support that?
Uh, I guess, let's see. I guess maybe if I'm analyzing it from the point of view that this is a fantasy film, that Jared is indeed this mythical creature. He is not someone based on her life. So, like, it's not her abuser, it's not her mom's boyfriend. He is indeed this magical figure, and she has invoked like a magical spell, and this world has collided with her reality. So she has to face up to this reality, overcome the obstacles that this magical being has put in her path, and eventually succeed and rescue her brother. So I don't know if that supports my answer. I'm going with the premise that he is indeed this magical creature. He can manipulate reality. Once she enters his world, it's sort of now he's the master of this world and he can mold it to his will. And she has to use her intelligence and overcome it. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that proves anything per se, but that's what I'm using to sort of bolster my theory that she
Right.
actually entered this magical world.
Yeah. I mean, I would love, because like I watched this um man, I don't know when I first watched this. It came out in 1986, so I was 10. Um So I very possibly watched it like the minute it was released to TV, because I don't think I ever saw it in the theaters. And I never watched this. And it's interesting because I watch movies and like basically all media intake. I've at least seen some of what Ellie watches, and I don't really like I don't think my parents like cared, like, and and it was again an element of the 80s again, that they were just like, well, you're watching what you're watching, and if you have questions, you'll ask them. But there's such deeper meaning in it, and like I found there are definite things that you can talk about, like you know she adores her mom, like you can see in the scrapbook. Like I went through that like on freeze frame, like like a stalker. um but so she's desperate to cast her dad and her stepmom into that role of the nemesis, and Toby as as a byproduct nemesis. um so she can't accept that mom left, because mom, obviously she seems to be a lot like her mom in that she loves acting, and the mom was an actress, and all of that stuff. So when she comes back, you see her putting the scrapbook in the drawer and taking the pictures of her mom with Jeremy off the mirror and putting them in the drawer, as well as putting away like the music box, which had the princess that had the dress on that she wore at that party. So and I also kind of was thinking that, and this is far-fetched, but I like it. Um, so Sarah's journey through the labyrinth is reclaiming her own childhood innocence and dreams, because like mom broke her heart, like she broke apart the family. And there has to be, and not to say that she did something terribly wrong, in terms of like following her heart, because I don't know the specifics of their marriage, so I'm not going to judge. um, but that definitely, and especially in the 80s, when it was basically like, we love you but we don't love each other anymore, and that's the end of the conversation, and probably no therapy or anything like that. There's a lot of putting things back together. And and she's talking to Jeremy, she's talking to Jareth, who is Jeremy, who are all David Bowie. There are David Bowie statues, which I did not know. There are Easter egg David Bowie statues in like 7 places in
Yeah,
the
I read that. I actually saw the images. Yeah.
right. So she's like clearly obsessed with Jeremy. So, and clearly she has some mixed feelings. He's both a love interest and a nemesis. And again, we have like a love interest and nemesis who's like a bajillion years old and and a minor, which just needed to point it out. Um, so when she's come to take back the child that you have stolen, could that be her? Could that be talking to Jeremy? You hurt me, and I'm actually like I am coming to terms with this, and I'm going to move forward.
It definitely could be. I mean, I see the validity in the theory. That's the beauty of being able to formulate these theories. I see the validity in the theory that she could have been sexually abused by her mother's boyfriend. She probably spoke to her mom. Her mom may not have believed her, which happens often enough in real life.
Hmm.
And the mother chose the boyfriend over her. So,
Right, but I don't even think it has to be like that he abused her.
mm,
Like she could, think about like, okay, my mom my mom left my dad
Mm-hmm.
for let's find someone. Okay, I'm gonna find someone that I can't even think. Okay, David Bowie. He's that would be cool.
Okay.
Um, not anymore, but like 1980s David Bowie would be okay. Um, may he rest in peace. So,
Mm-hmm.
I would have some severe mixed feelings about it. Like, clearly, we don't know how successful the mom was, but Jeremy seems like he was pretty darn famous. Um, so, the lifestyle that they lead is probably much different than the lifestyle Sarah leads. And, fame and fortune and all of those things are just cool. And he's handsome and he's a heartthrob. So, of course, she would have mixed feelings like, oh, you're maybe my dad and you're very famous and sexy. So, what do you do with that?
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, it's fairly possible because even the way if we're going with it's a projection, even the way she casts the Goblin King, although I don't really find him sexy per se. I think honestly, the moment where I kind of found the Goblin King the most attractive was the ball scene.
Hmm.
I guess I couldn't get over the outfit that David Bowie wore. Like, now, I mean, I know sometimes it's like you project and that wasn't the point, but I don't know.
They
I
totally
kind
stuffed
of
his
found it
pants.
very distracting. And I know this was the 80s, so poofy hair, was very much in.
Hmm.
I don't know. Maybe I just couldn't get over the way David Bowie was stylized in that film.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I could kind of see because he is the villain in the story, but there are definite moments when he goes from being he's villainous, oh, like, but he's probably, he's very handsome too. So I could definitely see that,
Hmm.
especially in the ballroom scene.
Right.
There is that element. I know we hesitate to say mutual attraction because Sarah is supposed to be 16 in the film, so like I hesitate to say there's a mutual attraction, but there's definitely some kind of chemistry in the ballroom scene.
Hmm.
And that is when I kind of found David Bowie's character the most attractive.
Hmm.
But yeah, I can definitely see how while she may have some resentment to him because he's the man that sort of took her mother away, there
Hmm.
is that element where he's also very attractive. So I can understand why my mother may have wanted to go with him. So I can see both sides.
Yeah. Um, it's weird because I hesitated to watch this again. I must have bought it like years ago because I mean I have played it for myself a few times, but the first time when I bought it, I was really worried that that David Bowie would look like a clown. And I must have imprinted on that. Like like I must have just like because I see him and he looks otherworldly and not and and definitely he pulls it off. I mean, the wisdom of finding somebody that wears makeup and crazy outfits all the time for this role. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, because he can pull it off. He can look like I'm just dressed in like jeans and a sweatshirt because like he owns it so much.
Mm-hmm.
But I always figured that Sarah's mom had died. So it was kind of crazy when I realized that she'd left.
I know.
And it changed my view a lot.
Yeah, I don't know why. I mean, maybe because sometimes, like, I always assumed either the mother had died as well. I didn't realize the mom was an actress because sometimes when you see things in film, it's so hard to focus on the detail, especially in her bedroom when there is so much going on.
Hmm.
Some things are pretty obvious, some things are more subtle. So it could
Right.
be that it completely just like passed right over me, that, like I didn't even notice that David Bowie was playing the character of an actor and that he was standing right beside her mom. I did not
No
even notice
idea.
that.
No idea. And that's, I think that's an element of like, if you're not watching, like now, like when I was watching on a laptop, I saw it. When I was watching on TV, I thought it was just like pictures of her mom. And like, if I even sort of noticed a David Bowie picture, which I didn't, if I thought it looked like a famous person, I would have just thought that it was a cutout of hers, of somebody that she like admired.
Mm,
Like I did not realize that it was all her mom. Like I realized the scrapbook was her mom, but that also, like, if you're not reading any of the stuff, just might be that she's dead and that's her little scrapbook shrine.
mm-hmm.
But I mean, I can definitely, like, I kind of regret doing this deep dive because I love I love Jareth. I do. I'm sorry. It's not a popular view. Um
Well, I think
and
it's,
and he does want to control her. Like he says, just let me rule you and I'll be your slave. He
I mean,
clearly wants her as a possession.
but to me, it kind of, I know that it's very popular now to like nitpick at, especially at the 80s, because apparently the 80s was extremely problematic. But I think it's very popular to nitpick things to death. And I think if you analyze this as a fairy tale, in a lot of fairy tales, there is this young woman, maybe she's of age, maybe she's underage. There's this mystical beast like character that she either has to tame and
Hmm.
make civilized, or never becomes civilized but wants to possess her anyway. She may end up giving in to him, she may not. So if you
Right.
analyze this as a strictly fairy tale, okay, so the fact that she's underage, well, at the time the fairy tales were written, underage was not how we conceive of being underage.
Right.
And fairy tales served a moral purpose. So if you look at this strictly as a fairy tale, then it's perfectly okay that Jared is this centuries old creature. Probably he
Right.
doesn't even look as handsome as he does. Because to me, it never made sense that he is so human like and everyone
Right.
else is grotesque. Like, that never made much sense to me.
Well, I mean, I think that you do have a point that if he can see into her mind,
Yeah.
if he knows, especially since, she might have some super conflicted feelings about Jeremy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and sometimes he's paternal, sometimes like at the end,
Mm-hmm.
he's definitely doing like a lecture in song, like all these things I've done for you.
Mm-hmm.
And, now's the time that you need to make a choice, young lady.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I don't know. And like I'm fascinated by the peach dreams. We'll just call them the peach dreams when
Okay.
Jared ensorcels her.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and either way, whether it's in her mind or for real, I found that it had a lot of meaning for me. You
Mm-hmm.
know, that that dress, that dress and that, like, the hair, not the, like, the foot of hair in the back, like
Mm-hmm.
standing up straight, but like that whole front view. Um that man, I would have paid anything. Would have given my soul for that in the 80s. And and just that everyone else is awful. Like everyone else is mocking her, everyone else is cruel, and he's the savior. It's just an interesting, it didn't have to be that everyone else was so obviously evil except him. And then,
Yeah.
oh, go ahead.
No, I was the ballroom scene in general is probably one of the parts I enjoy the most. And the fact that that's the only other time where you see more humans in this world, which is
Mm-hmm.
also really interesting because I'm wondering, are these goblins that he's simply changed to look more human-like, which would kind of make their behavior slightly more believable? Because whenever you see the goblins, they're like laughing or cackling, or like lounging about. So I'm curious
Right.
about whether humans like him, like if he is actually, if that's his genuine form in this world, are there other people that look like him? Because when you see most of the kids, they're all like puppets or
I
whatever.
was kind of under the impression that they're all humans, that they
Hmm.
get their babies, their foundlings, they get turned into goblins, like
Oh,
Toby.
oh, okay.
Um, Either that or um, they need a ruler, and for some odd reason, that ruler has to be a person, or it always has been. So they take someone and raise them as the next Goblin King.
Oh, I see. I see what you mean.
Or he wanted to have the baby with Sarah, and that could be the next Goblin King, but he hedged his bets.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I was just looking because I have some images of her, and that's when Sarah actually looks the most grown up. I don't know how old Jennifer Connelly was when she did this film,
Mm-hmm.
but when you look at her character, the way she's stylized, she looks a lot older. You could almost forget that she's a teen.
Right.
Um, she's highly stylized. Yeah, it's one of the lovelier scenes in terms of the costuming and the
Mm-hmm.
design. If you go with the theory, and I know I keep on going back to the sexual abuse theory because this is the one theory that actually mentioned this particular scene. And if simply if she's, for example, forget the sexual abuse, that she's simply, blossoming into her sexuality, and there's this attractive older man, and she stumbles into this party, and like, because the people are very much like, they're not like, they're dancing close together. So if she's the virginal girl entering this party, like, one theory is just, oh, they're mocking her innocence, like she
Mm-hmm.
into this party where there's like all these foods and people are cavorting together, and here's this like young girl who's entered the scene, and let's see how she's going to respond to this, you know, because at one point she's almost completely overwhelmed by the people in the ball until Jared comes and almost like rescues her, and then they have this like dance moment
Mm-hmm.
together, and that's when the people actually start to back off, when Jared enters the picture and he basically takes her hand and starts dancing with her. Now,
Right.
whether this was completely staged to make him look like I'm your savior, I don't know. um, and I don't, and now I can't remember where I was going with this. Oh, okay.
That definitely would work in the mind control theory,
Yes, yeah,
that, like, I am I am the one that's going to keep you safe. And, and you are not capable of doing that.
yeah.
But go on, what were you saying?
No, that's basically going with the theory of like, she's a young innocent girl
Mm-hmm.
and sexual awakening and all these people, because they're all like much older than her. They're dancing closely, they're all masked.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
As
and
goblins.
Yes, and it also reminds me a lot of the Sweeney Todd film, uh, with Johnny Depp, the scene where his wife enters this masked party and everyone's cavorting and laughing, and I think she drinks some wine. It's a very chaotic moment. So this is almost very similar, where she's sort of overstimulated by everything that she's seeing.
Mm-hmm.
She's getting overwhelmed. She's also the only one that isn't masked at this point, and he at first is wearing a mask, and then it's like when he approaches her, the mask is off,
Right.
which I'm wondering if that's supposed to be where at this point he's probably his most genuine self without the mask, because that's also when
Yeah.
Song As the World Falls Down is playing.
Right.
Um,
And he's in love with her. I mean, and in one point, and I'm hopping
mm-hmm.
as I was hoping not to hop, but here I am hopping. Um, when we first see Hoggle and
Mm-hmm.
in another scene or two, you see that he has another face on the back of his coat. There is a face.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean the duality of all creatures. You know, yes, I can be in love with you and also a cretin.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean maybe he can take off the mask and show this caring, you know, this like caring lover aspect that you know he's generally keeping a little bit to himself. But then, you know, when she breaks through and she winds up in the dump,
Mm-hmm.
was that intentional? Like in in the imagination thing, it's like rife with meaning. There's tons and tons and tons that I want to talk about here. But
Okay.
but if it's real, if Jareth really took her and he and Hoggle gave her the peach and she fell into this dream and then she broke out of that, like, because those are all like the bubbles that Jareth was sending,
Mm-hmm.
the orbs. Did he mean for her to wind up there?
Yeah, now that you mention it, because when she first gets the peach, she's in a forest.
Mm-hmm.
So it would kind of make more sense to me that, okay, one of the bubbles that Jared sent out was this ballroom scene.
Mm-hmm.
So it would kind of make sense if once she's smashed through it, she's back in the forest. That to me would kind of make more sense than ending up in a dump, unless maybe when she passed out in the forest, she was transported to a dump. But then other than, you know, making it a kind of a creepy scene, because the junk lady is pretty creepy,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't make much sense, because you could still have, like, say she awakens in the forest, she manages to break free of the illusion that he's created, so she's in the forest. He still could have sent someone to sort of derail her, like she continues along in the forest and he sends someone else, and that someone else convinces her um, that, you know, she's perfectly safe here, or that, you know, that things are okay, and starts showing her, like the junk lady does, all the familiar objects as a way
Right.
to reinforce that you're where you belong. You know, don't worry about the brother, don't worry about your parents, you're
Mm-hmm.
here. Like, yeah, now that you mention it, waking up in the junkyard makes no sense to me.
Well, I'm actually like moving, like going through. I still had the movie up, and I'm like I'm trying to find where she breaks out of the dump, and I don't think that she's like when she breaks out. I'm trying to find what the back of it looks like when yeah, they're totally in a dump. Like the whole thing has changed because they were right by the castle and they realized Sarah was missing and they break her out and they're at this dump.
Hmm.
They're not in this area where, you know, where they'd started, which I don't I it that doesn't bother me. Oh, sorry. Sir Didymus needed to discuss having to fight to the death. But you know, I wonder why they did it that way, you know, like, because they could have just had her break through. And like, kind of in my imagination, when I was trying to figure this out, I was thinking there is no reason that she couldn't have been underground with this junk lady, because Jared can make anything look like anything. And then when she broke out, she was just coming out of the side of a hill. But they're actually like this whole junk landscape is there. So I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, it kind of seems like it was probably just another creative way to get another puppet in there. Yeah, because thinking about it now, it makes no sense that she would
It
end up in
does
a
to me.
junkyard. Oh,
Oh,
well,
let me at it. Let me at it.
okay, all right.
Like, it doesn't make sense in terms of Jareth trying to bring her to his side,
Mm-hmm.
but it does as her growing up, as her like embracing, like being a grown up. And so where is this? I have so many notes. So many notes. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So at what point do our belongings own us? Because she's just giving her all of the things that she's been holding on to. Like her room is full of like fantasy stuff. And not to say that you can't embrace fantasy as an adult, but it doesn't look like she's moved on at all. Like her bookshelf is full of fairy tales. Like there's nothing else. There's stuffed animals, fairy tales. MC Escher, which is also like the end where they're going up all the stairs and stuff. There's no real maturity in that room. And then like when she's putting all that stuff away at the end of the movie, I wonder that's, you know, I wonder if that's like the symbol of that, you know, and an adult's imagination can be accessed without objects. Like, because we need objects to enact our imagination more as children. Whereas I think our imaginations grow instead of shrink as adults. We just don't have to embody them with physical objects as much.
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely see your point from like a metaphor standpoint. Yeah, the junkyard makes perfect sense. Um, uh, yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, and that makes perfect sense from like a metaphorical standpoint. I was more looking at it as like narratively how she's getting from one point to the next, because when she travels throughout the kingdom, it's almost like when she was in the party, she did like a time jump and ended up someplace else. Like, so I
Right.
was thinking more from the standpoint of the narrative, like how she's getting from place to place. Considering that she started off in the forest,
Right.
like why wouldn't she have ended up back in the forest, and then she's traveling, and then she enters upon this wasteland of junk, and then she
Right.
meets the junk lady. So that would
Oh, but I realized that this is, when you're done, don't
no,
let
I'm
me
finished.
forget.
I'm
Okay.
good.
Um, I do understand what it means.
Mhm.
And my old understanding of the dump scene was that he was trying to suck away her time.
Mm.
Like that was just another way, like get her all nestled into her little safe cave with Lancelot and all of her toys and her comfy bed, and she'll think it's all a dream until her time is up.
Mm. Yeah, I can see that too. That he's distracting her. I can see that. I still think he could have done it in the forest, though. I don't know. Maybe I'd like to know how
That's the biggest problem you have in this movie.
No, it's not. It's not the biggest. It's just, one of the problems I have in this film. But no, like, and I never really thought about it much. To be perfectly honest, I always accepted the junkyard scene. I thought it was one of the freakiest moments in the film, because just as she's starting to try to shatter the illusion, here comes this person, and the person sort of gaslighting her and showing her all these objects. You see, oh, look, it's so and so. You love so and so, don't you?
Right.
Look, it's so and so. And don't you just love so and so? It's one of the freakiest moments in the film.
And it's like all of her stuff. Like, I don't know if you noticed, because I didn't notice until this time. Like, it's not her recent stuff. It's like little kid stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't like, I knew Lancelot, but she still loved Lancelot. And like, it's stuff that was obviously gone, like slippers that she'd clearly outgrown. And she, and she said, oh, you didn't want to get rid of these, did you? And it's, it's all the things that she was holding on to.
Mm-hmm.
And children are the biggest hoarders in the world. I mean, it's like a shrine of toys we don't use, but God help us if we suggest that they're given away. And then like once a year we do this purge where like she'll come to terms with it because her birthday and the holidays are coming up, and and like I just say something like, you can't get new stuff, there's nowhere to put it. But that's the only way I can do that.
And you brought up an interesting point about Sarah's sort of need to grow up to overcome some of the like safety nets she's established for herself. I'm also wondering if the film, I mean, yes, granted, when you're an adult, it's expected that you develop healthy coping mechanisms, that you don't sort of retreat as Sarah's done into her fantasy world, because it's much better there. That's the expectation, that as you're an adult, you're able to sort of develop healthier coping methods than just pure denial and pure like retreat into a fantasy world.
But that was not taught, that was never really taught.
Yeah.
And
but really, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. No, I just another cultural statement of observation, like I really try very hard to examine everything in the bid to not mess up my kid in the same ways I was messed up. So we are super intentional, but she'll be messed up in a different way. It'll be special. But it's that you're supposed to grow into this functional adult like magically.
No, and I kind of feel there's also this push where and you see it when like fantasy writers or illustrators or even creative individuals in general, where they don't abandon that childlike, I guess, curiosity and that childlike drive, that sort of fantasy, where obviously they distinguish between the two, but they still have that element of childhood innocence, which it's almost as if when you become an adult, it's like you abandon all your childish things and now you grow up, please. And at the end, while Sarah has definitely grown as a person, because she starts off very self-absorbed, very selfish, very bitter, and she definitely grows, because by the end of the film, it's not just about her, it's also about Toby. But at the end, there's a moment of sadness where like the friends that she's made say, we'll always be there for you when you need us. And at the end, they join her in her bedroom, which, depending on what theory you're buying into, you could read any way, but that even though she has grown, she still is entitled to have that element of magic in her life. It shouldn't be completely abandoned just because you grow up and you wear your big pants now. So that's how I kind of interpreted the ending.
Yeah. And you got rid of your quote unquote childish things, but those things aren't gone. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to have a physical embodiment of
Mm-hmm.
everything you've ever had, which is a really hard concept for children.
Mm-hmm.
And, given the amount of hoarders in this universe, and, I seriously, I have to work very hard not to be a hoarder, to remind yourself that you don't always need the physical embodiment of the thing,
Mm-hmm.
whatever the thing is, to be able to remember it.
Yeah, but so this was really fun. I had a good time really discussing this film, and I think we did manage to stay on track. I know it may not have seemed that way, but I do think we really did manage to. I mean, we definitely stuck with at least two theories. We sort of broke it down. We sort of explained why we believe one, or,
Hmm.
and of course, any theory is a possibility, which makes it very interesting to look at this film and really discuss it. And there's so much to sort of analyze and look at.
And I actually had one more thought, um,
Sure.
if that's okay. At the end of the movie, when all the friends are in the mirror, and she says, "I need you all. Sometimes I need you all," and Jared flies away. Like, there was this ominous touch that I read about in um the Carl Jung and Mind Control, and that's Falcon Movies, from like a
Hmm.
WordPress site from 2015, and it's just titled Carl Jung and Mind Control. That he had accomplished his mission, and like, before I read that, and still my takeaway, if I just think of it as a fairy tale, you always need a nemesis. You can't, you always need something to fight against or something to work for. There has to be something, or your imagination is going to not have a lot of zing. And I also just wanted to point out that Never Ending Story and One Way of Looking at the Labyrinth is these are both about imagination, which I find fascinating.
True. It's,
And
yeah,
oh, go ahead.
imagination. No, going like imagination and the need to sort of, grow up and sort of assume the responsibility. Both Bastian and
Hmm.
Sarah have parents that are trying to get them to grow up, to start daydreaming, to face reality.
Right.
So yeah, I see the comparison is valid. I see your point.
Okay, now I'm done.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you once again for joining us. And Amy and I had a really good time discussing this film, and we hope that if you haven't watched it, or if it has been a while since you have, then definitely revisit. It is available through the library system. You could place it on hold or call us and we'll place it on hold for you. And it's also available through Amazon Prime. So thank you again, and we look forward to talking with you next time.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.